Everyone. Greetings from this beautiful Kentucky horse pasture. If you haven't, Visit Lex has some really great Zoom backgrounds that are Kentucky specific, and I love getting on calls with national colleagues and showing them just how gorgeous Kentucky is. I'm Dr. Lillian Brislin. I'm the director of the Food Connection. We're a local food systems center on campus. We host First Friday breakfasts. If you've ever been to one of those, we do a local food summit. And I'm here just as a co-shepherd with Brett of this great farmers market journey we're going on. So today's plan, as you know, there's some new Healthy at Work guidelines that have come out from our governor's office. And our hope today is to connect you with our Department of Agriculture. They've translated those guidelines into some ideas for farmers markets. They're going to walk you through that document. We have some new allowed activities at markets that I think some of you will be very excited to hear. And then, as you remember from our last webinar, our plan is, when in doubt, ask someone who knows, right? We have lots of resources available at the university, at local public health offices, at state offices, at our state agencies, and we're all in this together. As we know, the context for the COVID pandemic, things change. That's the nature. Time goes on, things change. We learn more, guidelines change. So we make a plan, we communicate it, we revise as we need to, and then we communicate it again. So we've got our public health colleagues. We're so thankful to have them here with us to share their perspectives. They're going to walk us through some of the newer guidelines because most of our markets have a lot of these guidelines in place. We're an essential service. We've been distancing. We've had sanitation practices like we walked through last time. So it's just adding a few more thoughts or considerations to the great work you all are already doing. And at the end of the webinar, our colleagues at Community Farm Alliance are going to show us some new examples from the field of really creative and thoughtful ways that our markets across the state are putting these guidelines into action. A note, we will not be doing a live Q&A today. There's a lot to cover, and there's probably going to be some really specific questions, but share your questions in the chat box and we will compile those and use those as a resource to create new guidelines or give some new clarity, come back to you all with really robust answers instead of trying to answer them on the fly. We want to make sure we get it right. So that's the plan for today. And I wrote that there. So, Brett, if you would advance the slide. Again, as we said last time, you're going to hear, you can walk through KDA's great guideline document that they're going to show us. And for each,
Lillian.
Please mute yourself. Hi, Steve, please mute yourself. You can walk through those guidelines, figure out how are we going to do this at our market, write it down. That's your plan, communicate it, check with folks, make sure everyone's on the same page, and then revise as needed. That's the plan. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce, we've got Sharon Spencer and Nancy Monroe here from Kentucky Proud and our great Department of Agriculture to give us the updates.
Right, welcome everybody. Sharon and I are very excited to be here on this webinar today. If we can go on, Brett. Just wanted to give some quick updates, some good news, hit some high points that sometimes get lost. You know, Kentucky's farmers markets, they've been challenged through this time with all the changes, and you guys have done an excellent job of adapting and overcoming and just making it work. So I just want to give a shout out to the markets that are currently open and the great job that you are doing. Just a little bit of update. As of right now, we have about 160 markets registered throughout the state, which is about where we were at last year. We've added some new markets in, and we have 2 brand new counties, Butler County and Casey County, are new counties that haven't had markets in the past. So that is very exciting. As you know, the farmers markets are essential. They're the source for local, fresh, and healthy food for customers, and they're vital for our vendors. Our farmer producers depend on this as part of their income. Farmers markets look vastly different than what they have been in the past, where in the past we've promoted being a gathering place. We're doing a 180, and now it's come, get what you need, and then we have to leave. So with social distancing and everything, you know, it's just a totally different from what we've done in the past. And with all the added guidelines, even with those guidelines, many markets have seen an increase in sales. So that's exciting. If you want to go to the next one.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we appreciate UK and CFA being our partners and everything on this presentation today. We just wanted to let you know, at the Kentucky Department of Agriculture, we understand, we know that the times are different. We know that we are not in normal times whatsoever. And so it's been a big challenge for a lot of our farmers markets. It's been a big challenge for just all of us in general, even our families. So it's we're trying to make for sure that we get all of the information and everything out to you all as much as we can. Just as a reminder, Kentucky Department of Ag, we do not actually regulate the farmers markets. We do provide support. We do provide marketing opportunities. But the big thing is we're there for you. We're trying to provide you with all of the resources and everything that you need. So that way you can take that information, go back to your farmers markets. You can create your own rules, your own guidelines of how your market wants to operate. Each of our 160 markets that we've got are all independently operated. You have got different, your markets are so different on how you operate and the products that you offer and how you're set up. So it's really unique of all of our markets of how we've got, but we do work very closely with the University of Kentucky. We also partner with the Department for Public Health and the local health departments. And their main responsibility is to go out and to keep you safe, to keep the farmers market safe, to keep the farmers safe, to keep the customers safe, to make for sure we've got that food safety and everything provided at our farmers markets. So we're real excited about having the Kentucky Department for Public Health Food Safety Group joining us today on this, and you're going to be hearing from them a little bit later. But we do have we do have some of the items that we do regulate, though, is the scales. Of course, anybody who's got scales at the markets. We also do the eggs. We've got state egg regulations that everything has to be followed. And then, of course, the Senior Farmers Market Nutritional Program is also out of the KDA office. Okay, Brett.
Okay, so on a good note, I know Lily was talking about some of the stuff is farmers markets, you've been open and you'll continue to be open. And as of May 20th, all vendors were welcome to join the market back. So that was really exciting when they could do that. So now your non-food vendors, your crafters can join the market. Also, food service vendors could join the market on May 22nd. Those are your vendors who are selling ready-to-eat food under the farmers market temporary food service permits and the temporary food service permit. With that, you must follow the Healthy at Work restaurant guidelines, along with the guidelines for the permit that are in the 2020-2021 KDA Farmers Market Manual and Resource Guide. There are several pages dedicated to that in there. Just remember, though, that there's still no gathering at the market, and there should be no seating. So when a vendor is selling ready-to-eat food, it needs to be to go. And I just want to also back up, even during these times and these challenges, a lot of markets are selling out in early season. You expect to sell out when your tomatoes, your corn, your squash come in. But these early season markets where it's mainly your co-crops, in the past haven't sold out. But vendors are reporting an increase in sales and markets are selling out. So that's an exciting news and exciting there.
So on the downside, Nancy and I decided we're good cop, bad cop, and I got the bad role. But on the downside, we are still saying no sampling at the farmers markets. Sampling applications, if you have sent in your sampling application, Nancy does have those. Those have been placed on hold for right now. We've also said no cooking demonstrations allowed at the farmers markets. You can do, though, the farmers market temporary food service. But as far as doing a cooking demonstration, a lot of our UK staff does the cooking demonstrations along with the Kentucky Proud Plated Up recipes. I know that sells your products. I know sampling sells your products. But right now, we really need to keep that as not being allowed at the farmers markets. We are hoping that that is going to be changing maybe later on in the market season. As we go along, we will let you know. We did check into, though, we have asked some other states. We've actually pulled information off from the websites and looked at other states. We've looked at other farmers markets across at these states, and they are pretty much following the same guidelines. Sampling and cooking demonstrations, doing the taste testing at the markets has been a big concern of too much of touching products. So we want to make for sure that we kind of limit that. So we're trying to keep everybody as safe as possible. So right now we want to kind of keep that on the downside, and just as soon as we are able to relieve that or lift that, we will let you know immediately. So thanks. We went backwards.
Okay, so on May 20th or the 18th of May, we came out with our updated guidelines and minimum requirements and guidance for Kentucky direct farm marketing operations. Those guidelines can be found at the website referenced above, and there's the direct link for that. Also on the direct, on those websites, you will find other links to our partner organizations, whether it's CFA, Kentucky Hort Council, K-Card, University of Kentucky. We directly link to them and to their COVID-19 related resources. So please check that out. It's there for your use, and we hope that you find it very useful. On the page also, you can find information on sourcing hand sanitizer. There's a frequently asked questions document. There's links to required signage and recommended signage. And also the Farmers Market Citizen social media cards, which help let you know what is expected at markets right now. So, and the Kentucky Proud Farmers Market graphics are on that page too. So the big thing, I know Lily was talking about it, is communicate, communicate, communicate. Communicate to your customers before they go to the market. The first thing you can do is really communicate on social media, and or if you have email lists that you communicate through. Let your customers know what is expected. What is your guidelines on masking? Do you have a traffic flow? Is there only one entrance and exit? Where would you enter the market at? Let them know what vendors are going to be there and what products are going to be available, so they can plan their list ahead of time and know who they want to go to. That will also cut down on the number of people in the market because you're making it more efficient for them. Also, just communicate how the senior and WIC programs are being offered. And a lot of markets are not allowing pets at this time because that just causes more social interaction. And here's just a couple. There's a picture of St. Matthew's Farmers Market. They have a normal market where you can walk up to the vendors, but also in a separate parking lot, they have a dedicated pickup for pre-order orders that have been placed. So they put a picture online of what to do, and that just helps educate their customers. If you want to go to the next.
Okay, so getting into the nitty gritty of what we sent out, the minimum requirements and guidance for the Kentucky Direct Farm Marketing operations, and we have this effective as of May the 20th. This was part of the Healthy at Work order information that came down from the governor. And so I'm going to be addressing some of those, but then also you're going to see under some of these that we've got Department for Public Health. They're going to be providing more information because they're going to be the experts in the field, and they're going to tell you the proper way to use, maybe the masks, the gloves, and then also getting into the testing, the healthy coordinator that they want to have there possibly at the market. Remember, these are guidelines that was issued for businesses. So, and a lot of the businesses were just getting started. Our markets have already been, we had some winter markets that continue throughout the season. And so they just kind of took a lot of these and just ran with it. So most of this information that you're seeing in this, you're already doing, and you are all already winning with this. Our markets here in Kentucky has always been safe. We want to continue to keep it that way. We've never had issues. If we do have an issue to where somebody was to get sick, there was an issue at the market, if it's in Western Kentucky, it's going to affect all the markets. If it's in Eastern Kentucky, it's going to affect all the markets. So depending on wherever the market's located, it's going to affect all the Kentucky farmers markets. So we want to make for sure we try to provide you with the most current, up-to-date information that we are getting, and hopefully that we can provide you with some information and some items to use on it. So the one thing is on the signage, we do have some CDC and some public health signage that you can use. That is available out there on our website. And also just signage just to remind everybody, you know, keep your distance, and that goes into enforce the social distance. You know, a lot of folks have got ropes. A lot of them are doing the chalk drawings, even on saying, you know, stand here or wait here and the next customer in line. So it's keeping the market in order. That way the customers are knowing, but you're informing those customers so they know what's going on with everything. The social distance, we've had a lot of great ideas, a lot of great suggestions from folks. A lot of people are putting extra tables in front of their booths. Some folks are actually putting all the products in behind the vendors. So that way the customer is coming up and the customer can select what they want. Shopping by their eyes, as we always say, shop with your eyes and don't touch. We still have, I mean, I know we still have some folks that's coming up and they like to pick what they get, but you just need to keep a close eye on that. Watch them very closely, but just try to help work with your customers. The customers have really appreciated this. They like that customer service as far as curbside service, drive-through service. It's caused an increase in sales in a lot of farmers markets, and I've heard from some farmers markets that it's going to continue this even after COVID-19. So it's really kind of neat to see that. So when possible, try to limit the face-to-face. Again, that's the no sampling, the no cooking demonstrations, the online service. Everything, you all have to understand, everything that we're telling you guys, this is things that Nancy and I have preached kind of against. We've always said, sample your products, talk to your customers, lure your customers into your booth. So this is a whole new world for us too, because we've always wanted you all to be upfront, face-to-face with your customers. This is only temporary. This is only something to get through all of this, and hopefully we can go back to what was kind of a normal Kentucky farmers market. The universal mask, we going to allow the mask, encouraging your customers to mask, the gloves. I'm going to allow the experts with Department for Public Health to address that after we're done with our section. But the hand sanitizer, the hand washing, anytime you did a cooking demonstration, anytime that you did sampling, you needed to have a hand washing station. So most everybody knows what the hand washing station and everything is. We do have a copy of an example of one in our farmers market manual if you need that. We are asking though for the vendors to have hand sanitizer there available, and just to make for sure that you're using that. If you're getting cash, we're asking a lot of our vendors or whatever to possibly go cashless if you could. So taking credit cards. Credit cards is going to make a big difference though with your sales too, because people are limited on cash. So if you change over to credit cards, that's going to give you another opportunity to actually sell them more. A lot of times if they've got a debit card or a credit card, they're going to buy more than what they are with just regular cash. And they always say there's nothing dirtier than money. So we want to try and keep you guys safe and everything with that. Restrict the common areas. Kind of what we've referred to as the common areas is maybe seating areas. If you have kind of a gathering area to where you've got seats for your vendors, maybe to kind of take a break. We're trying to limit that and not have those open. That way you don't have that social gathering and everything of your customers. That can always come later when we can hopefully open some of these restrictions up and maybe bring the music back and bring some of the entertainment and everything back. But for now, we're wanting those areas, the playgrounds and all of those areas closed off for now. So proper sanitation, we just want to make for sure that you are just to clean. So your tables, your areas, anything that is frequently touched, maybe heavy traffic area. If you've got a door for somebody to have to go through, if you've got something that people has to touch a lot, just make for sure that you go in and clean those and kind of clean those often. The big thing is reusable shopping bags. Reusable shopping bags are great for a lot of the markets because you can get that with Kentucky Proud promotional money and you can have your market name on it. And most of the time folks carry those elsewhere besides just the farmer's market. So they're actually promoting that farmer's market along with everything. But right now we're asking don't use that because that could cause some cross-contamination. So we're just asking to use the new bags and everything if at all possible. So, okay, Brett, next. So again, some of the experts, public health is going to be talking about conducting the daily temperature health checks, doing testing plans, also designating the Healthy at Work officer, and then if there is a case, if somebody does get tested positive for COVID, then doing a notification or what your responsibilities is. But for right now, that's somebody telling me, okay, Sharon, you've talked too much. For right now, though, we're asking to make special accommodations. When I say special accommodations, you'll see this in a lot of stores, and I know a lot of some of the farmers markets has done that too. Some of your elderly customers, some of your high risk that may not even be elderly customers, but somebody that's got health conditions, that's got high risk areas that could possibly be at more of the target zone for COVID than somebody else. Maybe arrange for the market to be open an hour earlier. I know I say that because a lot of the markets are open so early anyway, but maybe have that first market hour as those customers in that high risk zone. Let them come in and shop before anybody else. Or maybe even make them to where you've got a curbside service or a delivery service, the drive-through service, so they can have that option. Also, we worked with the Department for Public Health. They were gracious enough to kind of agree that during this time, home-based processing, home-based microprocessing, if you have an elderly vendor that is in that target zone, or if you've got somebody that's got health conditions in that target zone, I keep saying elderly, but if you've got that high-risk zone that somebody is scared to come to the market and they're not going to be able to sell their products, they can give that to another vendor there at the market. They can sell those for them at that market during this time only. They can also have kind of a drop off, and I'll let Virginia talk maybe a little bit about that, but they can also do like a drop off on their porch and have a pickup. So instead of that face-to-face direct contact sale that we always talk about, but just for this time only, kind of limiting for those. So I'm going to, let's see, I'll educate, train employees. When we say educate and train employees, this is going with the Healthy at Work plan. This is talking about the businesses. So maybe not all farmers market has employees, but we look at it as the market managers. We look at it as the market volunteers, your staff, your vendors, your customers coming in. And that's to educate and to train everybody. This is a whole new world that we're in, all new regulations, all new changes, guidelines, everything that you've got to follow. And we want to make for sure we're keeping everybody safe. So information that we share out, information that maybe CFA sends, UK sends, anybody else, public health, you want to make for sure that you share that information with everybody else. Just don't keep it to yourself. Share it with everybody so they know. Again, that gets out to that communicate with your vendors, communicate with your folks that's helping at the market, your friends of the market, friends of the farmers market group, but especially your customers. Your customers are going to appreciate what you are doing to keep them safe. They may not like all of the different changes and everything, but you just need to tell them, you know, you're doing this for the market, you're doing this for the vendors, you're doing this for the customers to keep everybody safe. But we do have some training materials. I know CFA has got some training materials that they've put out. UK has been just a wealth of information of putting signage and everything that you can use there at the market. So just check out the websites, and that will provide you all with some information. So next, Brett. The big thing that we want to say, we greatly appreciate all of your hard work. You all make Kentucky farmers markets shine. We are so proud of what our markets are, how you all handle your operations, your business, how you all handle your farm operations. You all guys, you just do a fabulous job. We know we put a lot on you from time to time, but you all accept it. You all take that challenge, you go with it, and we do appreciate everything. Nancy and I are very blessed to work where we do and work with some of the best producers in Kentucky. So that is all that we've got. So I think that's going to turn over to, oh, and that's our contact information. So if you need to get in contact with us, Nancy and I are kind of working out of the office. We're kind of on that limit too of how many people can be in the office, how many can't. So we've got our cell phone numbers on there. So please feel free to try to reach us at our office numbers. You can leave us a voicemail. We do get our voicemails if we're out of the office, but our cell phones, please feel free to use those and call us. I hate to say anytime, but call us anytime. Lately it's been anytime. So we're here to help and just try to get everybody through this. So, okay. Brett,
Thanks,
go ahead,
Sharon.
or-
One quick thing I wanted just to mention on the signage thing that I've particularly noticed something very specific is your pricing signs and what you have available signs. Make those visible from a distance. So I collect price reports for the farmers markets and put those out. And there's some booths where I have to get right up on the booth. And if I'm trying to decide what I want to buy and I'm trying to keep my distance, it's impossible for me to tell what's even there. So that's one thing on the signage. As far as the webinar itself, just a reminder, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. One note, if you can make sure that you send that to everyone in the chat and not just to me privately, it makes it hard for us to collect everything on the back end if it's going to individual people. So you have a comment or question, just above where you type in the chat box, there's a little drop down and it should say everyone, not just Brett Wolf. I mean, I love talking to you on a one-to-one, but maybe we'll have to get on Facebook Messenger after or something like that. Cool. Well, I'll turn it over. I think, Lily, did you want to just go straight into the next one?
Yes, we have Virginia Hamilton from Public Health. Sharon, do you want to introduce our public health colleagues and turn it over?
Sure. We've got what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to get with Pam Herndon. We work directly with Kentucky Department for Public Health Food Safety, and they're our partners and everything on the farmers markets manual. So if anybody has seen our manual, most of that information comes from public health. So Pam Herndon is one of our contacts there, and she's one of the managers. And so I'm going to turn this over to Pam Herndon and let her introduce her two staff members and let them cover some of the items that's on the agenda next.
Hi, this is Pam. I have Dr. Rashid Souley with me today. He is with the University of Kentucky. He is conducting his residency with us at the Food Safety Branch. And I also have Virginia Hamilton with us today. Virginia, she oversees our home-based processing, microprocessing applicants, and I was going to let Dr. Souley speak first. Want to take it away, Rashid?
Also, before Dr. Souley gets going, if everyone could please double check that your audio is muted. We have some folks who are jumping in here, and so please, everyone look, make sure you're muted.
Hi, I'm Dr. Souley. Can you hear me? I just want to make sure that this is going through. Yes? Okay.
Yes.
I'm Dr. Souley. Thanks, Pam, for the introduction. I am a third-year resident in the occupational medicine residency program at UK. Prior to that, I was an attending physician in a whole different specialty. But we're here to talk about just some basics of PPE and how they apply and such. So this is actually a very important topic for me, at least being out and seeing how people are actually wearing the mask and seeing how a lot of people are actually wearing them improperly. So really the mask wear, the first thing always to talk about is do proper hand washing. First of all, prior to even touching the mask and such. And then I wish there was a video so I can actually show it, but my computer doesn't have a video, so I'm just going to have to talk through it, unfortunately. And then putting, of course, the mask over the nose and mouth, and then securing it under the chin. But the most important step really is making sure that you kind of clip it over the bridge of the nose to kind of narrow that opening, and also make sure that it fits snugly against the side of the face. That also makes breathing easier. A lot of people are wearing masks that are not really, that are either too big or too small for their faces. So, I mean, we got to remember that the viral particles are so small, so that if you have really more of an opening on the side or on the top of the nose, it actually can make it very easy for anything to get through. So in essence, defeating the purpose. Next slide. So I love this picture. I'm a surgeon by training, and pictures just speak really volume to me. So again, as we can see in picture one, kind of ensuring that the side of the mask actually faces outward, as we can see with the proper check mark. And then step two, of course, you know, what we all do is making sure that the strings are behind the head and over the ears. And then this is the most important step that I was actually talking about, which is the step number 3, is by pressing the metallic strip to make sure they actually fit the shape of the nose. And then, of course, make sure that you can breathe easily, that there's no gaps. And then step number 6, big, big, big important step, because everyone does this, and unfortunately a lot of people are not aware of it, is making sure that the front of the mask is not being touched while using it. I mean, the best way to think about it is the outside is contaminated. So it really defeats the purpose if someone is touching the front of the mask and then you take it off and then you either, use a tissue to blow your nose or touch your face. I mean, all those are ways for any viral particle to get through. So again, defeats the purpose. Next slide. And then the removal. First thing first, always, I mean, if you're wearing gloves, is to remove them first. Then wash your hands. And again, it's to remember that the front of the mask or respirator is contaminated. Do not touch. If they do get contaminated during the removal, immediately wash your hands or use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer prior to actually even removing the mask. And then grasping both ties or elastic of the mask or respirators, taking them off without touching the front at all costs, and then discarding it. And then the last step, but the most important one also, is washing the hands afterwards. Next slide. So someone asked a question about gloves, which is, I think, a very good question. For the general public, as of right now, I think this was sent as of yesterday when I looked at the date, really the CDC does not recommend vendors or just the general public to wear gloves to go to the store or such. It's only recommended to wear gloves if cleaning or caring for someone who's actually sick or COVID positive. Next slide. And for those that actually have to use gloves in case they have to, again, washing the hands is always the first step as usual. And then putting the gloves is a lot easier than taking them off. There's actually a technique to taking gloves off. And of course, the most important thing is making sure you're grasping the outside of the glove with the opposite hand first, the opposite glove hand first, then peeling it off. I know the picture is a little hard to see, my apologies. And then holding the removed glove in the glove hand and then sliding it slowly of the glove hand over remaining glove as a wrist. Next slide. This kind of really addresses kind of what I just read. So we can go to the next one too, which I think we'll learn more. So Sharon asked me to kind of talk a little bit about management of COVID-19 diagnosis in a vendor. So really the first thing always is following up with recommending them to follow up with a primary care physician. And of course, the local health department is a big asset for them, and they have to be also alerted. Now, if there's a positive diagnosis that's been made already, the guideline, of course, is to always self-quarantine for 14 days. And then there are 2 options for returning to work or going back to the farmer's market. The first option is returning to work if febrile for 72 hours, that's 3 days, without any antipyretic. That's Tylenol, ibuprofen, anything at all that will actually reduce the fever. And in addition to respiratory symptoms being improved, and at least 10 days have passed since the symptoms appear. Again, the improvement of respiratory symptoms, we all have to remember that those are very subjective findings, but again, we just kind of have to go by that. Next slide. And then the second option per the CDC that we have to follow by, we have to go by kind of guidelines, is they can return to work if they have been febrile for, doesn't really say, but the time is not really important in this case. They could have been febrile for 24 hours, they could have been febrile for 6 hours, and respiratory symptoms being improved. But in this case, they do have to have 2 negative nasopharyngeal swab or oropharyngeal swabs in a row that have been at least 24 hours apart that are negative. And in that case, they can return to work. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sule. I just want to check in and clarify. So the guidance that we have seen come from KDA, that I believe is their best interpretation of the governor's guidance, is that all employees should be wearing masks when interacting with the public. So this would be market managers or their employees, and a recommendation to vendors or their employees to wear a face covering at all times while at the market. Is that accurate?
Those are state guidelines that have been made by the governor, but from the CDC itself guidelines, studies have shown that there's really not been any benefit to actually anybody besides that's not in the healthcare system to wear them.
Okay, so our purpose here today is to share what our state has given as guidelines. So I think what we heard is, yes, the state's guidelines are that any market employee or vendor should be wearing a
Correct.
mask, and the CDC may have its own guidelines, but the guidelines for our state are that all market managers, employees, and recommendation to vendors and their employees to wear a face mask at all times. And we also saw guidance from KDA, and Sharon, please correct me if I'm wrong here, that anyone who is touching cash, enacting payments, or frequently touched services should have access to gloves and change them frequently. Is that the state guidance?
That is absolutely state guidance.
Great. Thank you so much. Next, so we have left to cover, great. Just to cover a few more points that are in the Healthy at Work guidelines. Markets are recommended to have a Healthy at Work officer, a healthy health monitoring plan. Is there someone from public health who could share with us what that looks like in places of business, what the roles and responsibilities of a Healthy at Work officer are?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm sorry I don't have slides. I'm a big talker, so normally I just talk. Hopefully that'll be helpful to you. But I can try to hit on some of these, Healthy at Work things that have been confusing with relation to the farmers market specifically. So, part of what's been confusing and difficult for lots of industries right now when it comes to Healthy at Work is trying to figure out what document applies to me. Is another document going to come out that's specific to my industry? Which of these things am I supposed to be looking at? So the good news, and Sharon touched on this earlier for farmers markets, are that you guys have been deemed essential throughout and you've remained open. So you aren't going to see one of those documents uploaded to Healthy at Work like you've seen for bowling alleys or for tattoo parlors or for these industries that were completely shut down, and now they're getting sort of a secondary document of reopening guidance that's going to have those industry specific interpretations. So we're not going to see one of those come out for farmers markets, which is a good thing for you guys. It keeps it very simple. You are dealing with and looking at the minimum requirements for all entities through Healthy at Work, right? You guys are included in that category. Now, of course, the language that's in that document is a bit broad because it's applying to lots of things that aren't farmers markets, lots of different types of businesses. But I think once you get in there and you start actually reading that language, it's pretty easy to sort of take and apply to whatever situation you have going on. So there is a note, an item in that order, that minimum requirement for all entities that says each entity should designate a Healthy at Work officer who is basically overseeing these requirements in the order and making sure all these things are happening, right? That there are temperature screenings, all these things going on that are actually required by the minimum guidance. So, at a lot of restaurants, I'm sure that's the manager. It's very clear cut lines, right? You have a manager, you have employees. Farmers markets are a little bit different. I know Sharon was sort of explaining to me that sometimes you guys are looking at paid employees. Sometimes you've got one volunteer who's kind of running the whole thing. It's going to vary a lot depending on size and where you're located. So that Healthy at Work officer might be a different person at each market, depending on who's best suited. But every market, I think, should be able to sort of designate that person, whether it's the market manager, volunteer, whoever it may be, to sort of make sure that these requirements are being met, that there's a plan that is being communicated, right? So as far as monitoring goes, the things that are different from what you guys are already doing, and you guys, because you've been open, are already doing a bunch of this stuff. It's already in a lot of the guidance that Department of Ag has cut out. So when it comes to monitoring, right, we're looking at, this is just my read on the document. Every day before somebody comes into work at a location, they need to have a temperature screening and then a health screening, which sort of covers those symptoms, right, which are symptoms of COVID-19. It's pretty flexible in that document, and we can provide some more details, some links if we need to, whenever we get those questions that are coming in. But basically, it's just saying that any employee, anybody who's working there, should be undergoing those daily temp and health checks. So that can happen in person. You may have some markets of the size and setup that they want to have the touchless thermometer, and they want to have the questions that somebody's asking as everybody comes in for the day. For some people, I imagine it would be easier to have everybody do it at home. That's also an option written into the guidance, that you can do the temp checks at home, that you can do the health screenings at home. Now, when it comes to having that list or what actually goes into these health screenings, there is sort of a bulleted list within the order itself, and also a link within that order to CDC guidance on what those symptoms are that have to come up on the health screening. So really, there's a lot of good stuff in that document itself that's helpful. And then when it comes to testing, this follows right in line, right? It's a pretty basic baseline for what you have to have under the Healthy at Work minimum guidance. So one, you're going to have that screening in place already, so that your market's going to be aware whenever somebody starts showing symptoms, either caught during one of those, every 24-hour screenings, or somebody could, become symptomatic while they're working. If you have that, sort of infrastructure in place, you're going to realize whenever that happens. Two, when it comes to testing in that Healthy at Work document, identifying local options for testing depending on the location of your market, because you are supposed to follow up with that symptomatic person to ensure that they're tested within 36 hours, right? So I would imagine on a certain level, that's just communication, reaching out and figuring out where are the places that people can get tested depending on where you are. And then sort of big point 3 on that testing plan is reporting the results of that test. And the Healthy at Work guidance just directs you to report the results of that test if it's positive to your local health department. There's also some good CDC guidance that we have up on the Food Safety Branch website, and I can share later if need be, that covers disinfection of areas when someone actually has been diagnosed positive. That's pretty much all that I have. Hopefully that sort of helps clarify at least a little bit how these documents relate to farmers markets and what's the actual guidance that you guys should be looking at. And again, we're more than happy to sort of help provide clarification or jump in and answer questions as they come up after.
Thanks so much, Virginia. So here, I'm just going to toss this idea. If you were a market manager and you were trying to figure out, okay, what do I need to have in place? Would a good practice, and I'm just throwing this out there, would a good practice to be to work through the KDA document of here's Healthy at Work for markets and direct marketing venues. And for those items, write down, here's our plan to address that, right? So that you have all in one place, who your Healthy at Work officer is, how to contact them, what the policies for, are you going to have people test at home or are you going to have people test at the market, and just sort of work through systematically your plan for each point. And then once you have all those compiled, communicate those with your vendors as expectations, and communicate those possibly also with your local public health officials.
I mean, that's a great summary, because that's really what it's going to come down to is these are so broad form. They're meant to apply to so many different things, and the markets are going to be so different location to location. KDA's already put out some great documents that really hit all of the bones of this already. So yeah, I mean, that Healthy at Work document itself is going to be a good resource if you're kind of struggling to find the detail or you're looking for those external CDC links to get to stuff. But yeah, absolutely, it's gonna be a little bit different everywhere, and just having that plan, having somebody who's in charge and everybody knowing who that is so they can share. And then of course, like you said, working with your local health department, because really it's your local health environmentalist boots on the ground who's going to be there to help work through those things with you.
And are they the best point of contact to figure out, if I need to figure out where can I send someone for testing, is that who I would ask to get the list of places?
Pam, feel free to jump in here. You guys may know more than I do. I would say the local health department is probably a good first touch point on knowing where you're testing.
Yes, I agree with you, Virginia. The local health departments would be the best people to know where to get tested.
Great. And as we've said all along, we make a plan, we communicate it with the people who have expertise and insight. They might give us some feedback. We communicate it to our stakeholders, we revise as needed, and then we communicate again.
And we're having some we're having some specific questions come in, and just as a reminder, we see your questions, we will address them. We're just not going to address them right now. We want to make sure we get it right the first time rather than having to go back and revise. And so we will have all these questions, and we'll actually put them together and make sure that we get that information to you about the answers to your questions, because there's specific ones that are really good. Great.
Any other points of clarification or insight from our public health colleagues? Hearing none, I am going to, go ahead.
I think we're good to go. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to pass the torch to our colleagues at CFA to see some great examples of what's happening on the ground. And I believe Jennifer was having some calling issues, but then she said she was back. Oh, I can see her now. All right.
Indeed. It's a beautiful sunny day, and for some reason my internet has gone out 3 times today, so I don't know what's going on, but hopefully it'll stay with me for the next 10 or 15 minutes. Good afternoon. I'm Jennifer Weaver with Community Farm Alliance, and I work with our Farmers Market Support Program primarily with markets in Eastern Kentucky. For those of you who may not know, CFA is a grassroots organization that's focused on supporting family farms through policy advocacy, programming, and leadership development. And our Farmers Market Support Program is focused on helping markets to develop and helping communities to develop and maintain thriving farmers markets across the Commonwealth. And we do this through technical assistance, through connecting folks with resources and some financial support. And as with all of the partners on this call, and many of you, our focus in the last 2 months has really been on COVID-19 and how we can, and in our case, how we can help farmers markets adapt to it. We would suggest that you check out our operations guide for markets to help you think through the details for alternative designs to maybe help you tweak some of what you already are doing at your market. It is found, and you can find that manual on our website at cfaky.org. Today, I'm going to walk you through some visual examples of how your market can adapt to the healthy at work practices that we've talked about today. And so that you can take these ideas, put them into place this season to ensure that your farmers market is part of your local food system for well into the future. And before I start going through all of this, I just want to recommend, if you have not already done this, get on social media, go to websites, see what other markets across Kentucky are doing, see what other markets across the country are doing. There's some really good examples about how to physically redesign your market, what messaging you can get out there, signage, all of that great stuff. So moving on to the next slide. Social distancing. These 5 markets shown here from east to west have all taken what they have, taken what's at their disposal, and figured out ways to create mechanisms in their markets to help their customers and their vendors practice social distancing. One of the things I want to highlight is up in the left-hand corner. This is the Menifee County market, which is in Eastern Kentucky. And they took tables, folding chairs, garbage cans, and caution tape and made 3 lanes, a shopping lane, a bypassing lane, and an exit lane. Very clear exits and entrances into each vendor. And of course, they also have spots where folks can stand 6 feet apart. They've also flipped their market. In previous years, vendors parked along the outside and backed in, and then customers walked along the inside. This year, they have flipped it so that the vendors are driving in and the customers are walking outside, which has created more space for their vendors and more space for their customers. And then you can see in Hardin County, up in the right-hand corner, they've simply printed signs, laminated them, and taped them to the ground where they want their customers to stand to help enforce that social distance between the vendor and the customer and then other customers. Next slide. And Sharon and Nancy both talked about creating some special accommodations to help your vendors who are high risk and your customers who are high risk continue to participate in the market. And these are just 2 more examples. At the Menifee County market, they are using a Google form for folks to pre-order, and then folks can pick up those pre-orders at the extension office just down the street. So they're doing it at the same time as the market, but that frees up space at the market for customers who are then coming and walking around. And then over in Columbia at the farmers market on the square, they're doing something similar to St. Matthews, where there's space for customers to walk like they might at farmers market in previous years, but they also have a drive-through lane for customers who feel more comfortable staying in their vehicle and not getting out around a lot of people. Next slide. So signage is a really important part of helping your customers know what to expect. On the top, you can see signs that are at the entrances of several markets across the state. And they all are just saying, this is what we expect of you in our market. And then down below, you can see two pictures where the flower is the place at the Covington market where you're supposed to stand and wait. And the carrot directs you to the way they want customers to flow through your market. And this can be chalk, it can be spray paint, it can be tape, whatever you have that works for your market. Help your customers keep their social distance by marking out 6-foot spots. And then if you have a direction you want your customers to walk in, help them with arrows or carrots or whatever you want to do, help them visually be guided around your market. Next slide. There's also signage that your vendors can use, which help to reinforce the expectations you have of your customers at the market. Both of the pictures on the left indicate to customers through signage how they are supposed to pay. The top picture actually has a basket for payment and a basket for produce, so that the vendor and the customer can step up and step back and pass the payment and the produce that way while maintaining social distancing. And then down at the bottom, of course, the vendor makes it very clear that, hey, I take contactless payments and here's how you can reach me. Please do this. One thing I really like about the Hopkins County vendor up on the right is that he's reinforcing the idea of not, if you touch it, you buy it, or please shop with your eyes, by putting a sign right out there that says, please don't touch, and if you do, I'm going to expect you to buy it. Next slide, please. Messaging. When you think about your messaging, I think there are two key things to think about. One is, what message do you want to send? And the second is, how are you going to send this? And I think what's on this slide just really is some good messaging from markets across the state. On the top left, there's positive reinforcement that the market is giving to their customers. And who doesn't like a little pat on the back, a little positive reinforcement? Thank you for doing a good job of social distancing, keep it up. That may help me want to keep it up the next time I'm there. Down below that, over in Whitesburg and Letcher County, they have positioned themselves, their market, as part of the solution to their community's response to this pandemic. And so you're going to want to help out the solution, a part of the solution to your community's response, and engenders that sort of togetherness. Up in the right-hand corner, Paducah has said, hey, come see your craft vendors. You can do that now as of May 20th. But remember, be sure to follow the CDC guidelines when you're here. And then at the bottom, this is from Hopkins County. And we tend to, I think, rely a lot on social media, but not all the customers coming to our markets are engaged in social media. So we also have to think about how we're getting our message out. And community newspapers, radios, TV, there's lots of ways that you can do that in your community. So think about that as well. So this is Bunny over in Hopkins County, and they did a nice article in the local newspaper about what changes are going to be happening at the market. And then she and one of her vendors have this great visual of measuring out 6-foot distances for their customers to stand at. Next slide, please. And of course, as we set expectations for how we want people to behave at the farmers market, we also need to give them the tools to do so. And Sharon and Nancy both touched on this, but these are a couple more examples of how markets are helping customers to get in, do their shopping, and get back out by letting customers know what there is ahead of time, what vendors are going to be there, and where they're going to be set up, And something new the Covington market has started doing is getting product and price lists from every vendor, including what forms of payment they take. So as a customer, I can figure out exactly what I want and what I need to take as far as payments to purchase those items. So this is really helping customers to be prepared. Next slide. And then there's a lot of other resources. Sharon and Nancy went over a lot of the resources available on KDA's webpage. UK has a lot of great resources. We do as well at CFA, items that can be printed, items that can be downloaded and put on social media. There are lots of good resources to help you get your message across as to how to keep your market safe and to comply with Healthy at Work. And thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. And please be sure to check out all of our COVID resources at our website, which you can see, cfaky.org.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And thank you to everyone who's put their questions in the chat box. As Brett said, we're going to collect those and see where we need to do some deeper digging, do some clarification, get you all some good resources and examples. We're always open to suggestions for how we can be best of assistance in clarifying and providing helpful examples like our colleagues have today. So with that, I think unless my fellow presenters have other thoughts or closing comments, I think that ends our program for today. So keep an eye on, go ahead.
Just one thing, the recording of this will be available afterward. I'll email that out to you. I'll also email out an evaluation that we would love to get your feedback on.